at me, I'm what you see. But can you tell the price in heat? I can tell you what I need. For 20 quid, we'll buy a bottle of tea.
Oh man, Chronic Nirvana Combat. Welcome, motherfuckers. we
Yeah.
man, scheduling this always, man. That's well, Karan, you've got to
Been a
move to
fucking pain
Dubai.
in the ass.
We've got to do this
Yeah.
over here in studio. Like,
Seriously.
I'll get you training in with the MMA guys
TK
over
MMA
here.
and fitness.
You know,
Yeah.
I'll be
Just
Ali
go to Kris gym over
Abdulaziz.
here. Yeah, you'll be my Ali Abdulaziz too. Yeah. My Tamil Ali Abdulaziz.
And we can manage some other boys over here. We'll get a thing going.
Fuck yeah.
And
Fuck yeah.
bro, we are 4 days away, and this is the fastest we've
Closest.
actually done a pod. Yeah, closest. Fuck me, I'm an idiot. Closest we've done a podcast to a PPV, and I'm so excited. Not just because it's Dustin and Conor, but there's also one of my other favorite fighters on the card, and that's Thompson. So in this particular thing, I just want to run down what I think are the three important fights on that card, and we've got some fun things to discuss after that as well. So
Yeah.
jumping in, right? Sean O'Malley. What the
Yeah,
fuck?
man. Sean O'Malley.
I just want to follow that up. What the fuck?
Yeah. That's
Well,
your
like,
take on
why
it,
the
man. I
fuck?
think. Yeah. Okay.
Oh
Well,
my goodness.
For starters, I think that it's very brave to give Moutinho a fight like Sean O'Malley because there's pros and cons to it. You see guys that come up from organizations like CES, like BTC Fight Promotions up in Canada, getting these shots in the UFC against well-known guys. So you know that a guy like Moutinho is going to bring a fight to Sean O'Malley. When you have that sort of dynamic against somebody like Sean O'Malley, who does bring in the sort of numbers that he should be bringing in, and he's not ranked in the top 10 or top 15 of his weight class.
I
Which
think he was 15. Oh, I think that was until he lost to Cheeto. Yeah. Fair.
When he lost to Tito Vera, he lost his ranking as well. So when you have somebody that is not ranked that highly in the bantamweight rankings, facing a guy who's also fairly new. I mean, I can't say that Sean O'Malley is new, but Sean O'Malley is sort of a household name. So you know that Moutinho is going to bring a fight. Moutinho being a grappler is going to add a whole different dynamic to this fight, I feel, because both of them have more or less the same body type, So, and Sean O'Malley, besides Thomas Almeida, hasn't faced anybody with that sort of body type before.
Okay.
So there's going to be a sense of urgency coming out of both fighters because, Sean O'Malley has a lot to lose if he loses this fight. So you know that Sean O'Malley is going to bring the fight to him as well. Right? He can't afford to slack off. He can't afford to lose to, first-time fighter in the UFC.
But the whole thing is that for me, the thing that bothers me is the fact that you've got a fighter like Jessica Ai, right, who's headline fight nights, right? And
Valentina
we had
Shevchenko
Ai
was.
versus Cavillo. She was the main card draw. How are you about to pump her down to early prelims? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, and you've got this new guy. You've got this Moutinho guy. Like, okay, I haven't really seen him a whole lot. And all of a sudden, this guy's the one that they're going to be putting on ahead of like people who probably deserve that spotlight more. People who've worked so hard. I'm not saying Moutinho hasn't, but at the same time, I feel like it's such a open fuck you that they're giving Moutinho, right? Like, yes, for Moutinho, it's great. He's fighting a guy who's got a name to himself already at 12-1, 13-1, right? And like, great for Sean O'Malley, right? For someone to have that kind of hype behind him with that kind of record, right? But at the same time, there's just so many more viable candidates in that bantamweight division, right? Like, why? And I know some of them have fights already. I know that they're booked, and I understand you can't give, you can't probably pull out Piotr Jan, or you can't just give them, give this guy the likes of, say, Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan or anyone else.
Not. Yeah.
But I mean, if Frankie Edgar's okay, that would be a nice fight,
I don't think so because I think the UFC is in the process of sort of, taking care of Sean O'Malley the way that they've been taking Conor. Now, this is a very bold statement I'm making. I don't mean to make it sound controversial or anything like that. But Sean O'Malley, they know, is an asset to the UFC. So they're not going to give him a fight. Now, when you think about his fight against Tito Vera, right, you see exactly what happened. Sean O'Malley hurt his foot, but he was very clearly not controlling the distance. And he didn't seem like himself in that fight because that was his first actual step up in competition besides Eddie Wineland. But you know that Eddie Wineland is also well out of his prime, which is why Sean O'Malley fucked him up the way he did. right? Which is why he was so in control. I'm not discrediting what Sean O'Malley can do to somebody, but and even Thomas Almeida, even after the Chito Vera fight, so he got that one back. But you know that once he steps up in competition, you know that he does face a few issues. Now, the fact that Jessica Ai has been pushed down to the prelims, I feel it sort of shows you the pecking order as to what and who the UFC does give preference to, and obviously that does matter because what you bring in for the company you get, right? Sean O'Malley brings in eyes. Jessica Ai, I mean, as much as I have respect for her, she doesn't. Right, because she's not in that pecking order of fighters.
We're looking at the draw. We're looking at the draw, yeah. And fair enough, because that's to say that, even you look at it that way, Sean O'Malley's had 4 bonuses in his last 5 fights. So, when you look at that, those numbers do speak for themselves.
Exactly. And it's a game of volume. It's a game of how many numbers this person brings in. Right? People want to see Sean O'Malley fight. I'm not to say that they don't want to see Jessica Ai fight. It's just they want to see Jessica Ai fight a good fight. If Sean O'Malley fights a fuck all fight, like even if he's fighting an absolute nobody, I mean, with all due respect to Moutinho, he is not known in the UFC. He's not in the UFC rankings. He's a newcomer.
He's a huge underdog. He's just a huge underdog.
Exactly.
At this point, it's the underdog part.
Fuck the underdog part. But just because nobody knows him, but they know Sean O'Malley, people want to see Sean O'Malley fight. So he is in that pecking order. Even Conor McGregor back in the day. Nobody knew who Conor McGregor was. They gave him Marcus Brimage on the main card of his very first UFC appearance. Who the fuck does that? Just because he brought in those numbers.
And I really hope he brings the fight to O'Malley. I'd like to see that. I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love for this to be a fight where even if Moutinho loses, he makes a statement saying, "Well, fuck you, I'm worth watching." Like that's
one more thing.
That's what I wish for the guy.
One more thing I do want to say about this fight is the fact that it's Moutinho's first fight in the UFC and it's happening on the same card as Conor McGregor. You think he's not going to bring a fight? I think it's going to be a fucking war. And I think that O'Malley's going to bring a fight because he's going to be fighting on the same card as McGregor for the first time as well.
The next fight that I've been waiting for is Wonderboy and Gilbert Burns. And I really genuinely respect both these guys. Obviously, I think Gilbert Burns let his emotions get in the way of his fight with Kamaru Usman. You saw him get a little emotional. Usman didn't care that they were teammates. Like we said, the guy is just a nightmare. And I hope Burns picked up something from that, learned to make those adjustments and not care if Wonderboy is a nice guy or not. Because Wonderboy is used to being a nice guy and still kicking ass. And, and just mentally speaking, I just hope Burns builds that fortitude because again, like you said, you're only as good as your previous fight, right? And Wonderboy beat Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, Neil Magny, which one? Jeff Neal, right?
Neil Magny.
Neil Magny? Yeah, he beat Neil.
I don't know.
I keep forgetting which one. I'm pretty sure it was Jeff.
Right? Battle of the Neils. And they had to fight each other at some point.
Stephen Thompson? Yeah, because I remember Jeff Neal's face. So, yeah, it was Jeff Neal. Because Neil Magny won his most recent fight. Yeah.
Against Jeff Neal.
Yeah. So yeah, man. I think Wonderboy did a great job there, considering that his fight calendar hasn't been exactly super full. He fights a little more sporadically compared to the others.
As good and as hard-headed as Gilbert Burns is, and as motivated as he might be, I mean, I'm still giving this fight to Gilbert Burns just because I prefer jiu-jitsu to karate, and I'm a jiu-jitsu guy myself. Well, sort of consider myself one because I love jiu-jitsu, but I think that I think that Stephen Thompson is going to be a real test for Gilbert Burns, and I think that once Usman fights Colby Covington one more time, I think that this is going to be if Thompson wins, he's gonna get a crack at the title because he's the only fighter that Usman hasn't fought in that top 10. Absolutely. Usman has run through everybody. Yeah. Him and Leon Edwards one more time. So I think that if Usman fights either Leon Edwards or he fights Colby Covington, I think that if what is that? I think that if Usman fights Colby Covington, he's going to fight the winner of Leon Edwards versus Stephen Thompson.
Yeah, I think
which makes a shit ton of sense.
Leon Edwards versus Stephen Thompson. I thought you were going to say Stephen Thompson and Gilbert Burns.
People love watching Stephen Thompson fight. Even his loss to Anthony Pettis. It was a pretty bad loss. It was a pretty devastating loss, and I've never seen Stephen Thompson getting knocked out like that before. And he was out cold when a guy like Tyron Woodley couldn't knock him out or couldn't finish him when he didn't knock him down. But I think that in terms of offensive wrestling, control time ability that Gilbert Burns has, I think that he should shut down the karate with just the takedowns and staying on top, and maybe attempting a lot of submissions. And Stephen Thompson, I don't think that Gilbert Burns should stand and bang with Stephen Thompson. I think that he should try to get the fight to the ground.
He needs to attempt as many takedowns as possible, because once again, Stephen Thompson's kicks are absolutely deadly. He can knock you out with those kicks. And last time that was Gilbert Burns' downfall. He got outstruck. And that's not to say he doesn't have power, but at the same time, you should I agree with you. I see the only way Burns taking this fight is if he takes it to the ground. I think that Gilbert Burns has, though I feel like the only place where he had a little bit of a distraction or a little bit of an emotional wall to overcome was when he fought Usman. But you could see the mentality in the two fights, right? Because when he fought Tyron Woodley, he was ready to kill. When he fought Damian Maia, he went in with a vengeance. But when it came to Usman, it was like fighting a brother for him. So I feel like that was the only thing that set it apart. Like I wouldn't hold that loss against him, because you're going down to Kamaru Usman, who's one of the best, right? And
exactly. You lost to Usman, so
there's it's the same thing as how Dustin lost to Khabib. You can brush that off and come back, because there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
So when you put those cards there, I would give this fight to Gilbert Burns as well. But I want to call this and say that Gilbert Burns takes this by submission in the third round.
I think he beats him via TKO in the fourth or the fifth round, because if you're going to beat Stephen Thompson on the ground, it's going to happen late in the fight when both of y'all are sweaty. And, that's where Gilbert Burns sort of thrives. If you saw his fight against Tyron Woodley, he got better as the fight went on. And prior to that, he had never been in a 5-round fight. He had never, ever, prior to that, been in a 5-round fight, which was very surprising, because he looked even more comfortable in the fourth and fifth rounds.
Right.
Another thing I want to say is that if more than Stephen Thompson's accuracy and his timing, he has an ability to dictate the fight on the feet. Whether or not the other person's moving forward, you always see Stephen Thompson in control when two people are on the feet with him. So even when he was backing up Anthony Pettis and before Anthony Pettis knocked him out, you saw that he was the one dictating the pace at that. When he fought Darren Till, you saw that he was the one leading the dance.
Absolutely, man. I agree with you. And so yeah, we've got a third round submission and a fourth or fifth round TKO for Gilbert Burns. Either way we see it, we see Gilbert Burns taking the W. Which brings us to headline fight.
The main
Dustin
event.
Poirier, Conor McGregor. And, I've got to point out two of the most important things. You ready for it? Dustin's in the red corner and Conor's in bold. I think that's the game changer.
Okay. I thought this was going in a more sensible direction, Nikhil. What the fuck, man?
It's fucking juju, yeah? Like last time, think about it, right? The red corners won, right? The red corners won each time, right? And if Conor's not bald...
Conor was in the blue corner. Conor was in the blue corner in the first fight.
He was? I thought Conor was in the red corner because it was McGregor versus Poirier. It was McGregor.
It was Poirier McGregor. Poirier was ranked higher than McGregor at that time.
Oh shit, no way. I thought it was the other way around. Okay, fine. Fuck the red corner part of it. Okay, that theory has been invalidated right now. But Conor's not bald anymore. Huge difference.
Conor's not bald anymore, yeah.
Conor with hair is dangerous, Conor. What else do you say? Look, apart from the fact that...
I don't know how to respond to that, man. I don't know how to respond to that because I thought this was going in a more sensible direction. Fuck. Okay, I guess we're doing that.
No.
But yeah, the third fight between Dustin and Conor, fuck. They say money doesn't matter, but I think this was a big factor when it came to Conor and Dustin. More than the morality of it, with them having one win each against each other by knockout. By knockout. That too, because people say Conor doesn't have the conditioning to go, to get the knockout in the second or the third round, which may or may not be true, considering the fact that he's got heavy hands even late in the fight. Now this may not be a very valid point, but when Conor lost to Khabib, and there was that whole commotion in the cage at UFC 229, Khabib's teammate Zuba jumped the cage, and Conor punched him, and he gave him a black eye. This is after he's been strangled by Khabib and beat on for the last 4 rounds. This was after he had to deal with people around him trying to attack him, and he still managed to get in the left, a hard left cross on somebody and fuck him up completely. But my point is that I think that Dustin takes this fight because Dustin is in the prime of his career right now. And I think that the winner of this fight, if it is Dustin, Dustin is going to face he is going to face the champion Charles Oliveira. Conor, as much as I love him, as as charismatic, as enigmatic as he is, and all that he does for the sport, don't get me wrong, I love Conor. Okay,
absolutely.
For all his shit talking, for all his antics, that's part of who he is. He's the one that got eyes on this sport. He's the one that gave Dustin his red panty line. He's the one that gave every fighter a red panty line with their wives or their girlfriends or whatever the fuck, So he's the one that when you fight him, your life changes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have this character that people hate on so much, you're still gonna watch the fucker fight. You're still going to see him, whether you want to see him get fucked up or fuck somebody up. You're still going to watch him fight.
Yeah, however, I think it's very irrational to hate on the guy,
Exactly, and however, I do feel like Dustin is going to take this fight via TKO, or he's going to beat him over 5 rounds. I'm more convinced that he's going to beat him if it goes to a decision, knowing the sense that it makes for the UFC to I know for a fact that Conor's in the twilight phase of his career right now. He's not the best. He's not 2015-16 Conor that he was, because that was when his performance peaked.
Absolutely.
I feel. But knowing how the UFC is with with their fighters, again, no disrespect to the UFC. Obviously, there is favoritism when it comes to certain fighters, and there is they do give decisions to people that they do favor. Because I think very clearly in that Nate Diaz rematch, besides the 3 knockdowns, Nate won that fight. Nate ran away with that fight. And they gave it to Conor by a split decision. And there's always that controversy because people can always deal with controversy. They can't deal with, they can't deal with a sport being that honest. Because if they didn't give Conor the win, Conor's career was over at that point. Then there wouldn't have been an Eddie Alvarez fight. There wouldn't have been the Floyd Mayweather fight.
True.
So I think that Dustin needs to finish him in this fight again, and more convincingly, because if he's going to have one more shot at that title against Charles Oliveira, I think that he needs to do it in a very impressive fashion. Or knowing the lightweight division and knowing how volatile the decision making is in that division, because I don't see Justin Gaethje anywhere, because they might they might just give that fight to Justin Gaethje. They might just give the title fight to Justin Gaethje if Dustin is if Dustin is injured or if Dustin doesn't do well.
But they clearly said that. They clearly said that there's only one of two ways. It's either Conor or Dustin, which I think is kind of bullshit because you're just neglecting Justin Gaethje.
Exactly. He's sitting on the sidelines, and Justin Gaethje is always down to fight. So you never know what might happen, right? He trains. Justin Gaethje and Kamaru Usman now train together with Trevor Whitman,
right?
And all their fighters are always ready to fight. You saw what happened with Rose and Zhang Weili. Right, she fucking brought a fight to the champ, and she ran away with her title.
Absolutely.
And but I think that Dustin does take this fight via TKO in the 3rd or the 4th round. If it goes to a decision, I'm going to be very surprised if they give it to Dustin, unless he wins overly convincingly, which Conor is not going to let him, because he's not going to make it an easy fight. Like he had that dog fight with Nate. Like he's had all these absolute. I can't say he's had wars in the past, except with Nate.
I think the only 2 times he's actually gone to decision has been with Nate and with Max. Those only 2 times. And but the surprising thing is Conor still managed to do more visible damage to Dustin than Dustin managed to land to his face. Yes, Dustin picked apart his calves, right, without a doubt. But regardless of him having that dead leg in that 2nd round, he still managed to land some pretty heavy, if not damaging punches. Because it's a good. Exactly. I genuinely feel like it was a good thing that Dustin ended the fight in the 2nd round, because had it gone to the 3rd, it could have swung McGregor's way, purely because the amount of damage you can take to your head is also somewhat limited. Yes, Dustin's taken that kind of damage against Dan Hooker. He survived.
And
I don't doubt. And Justin Gaethje. I don't deny his ability to survive, but. You have that moment when you look at Conor McGregor land those punches. Okay, I'll give you an example. When you see Dustin land some punches, you're like, oh, nice punch. But every time Conor lands it, you're like, is this the knockout combo? Is this the knockout punch? You have that. I feel like that's the difference in that degree of worry that you have when it comes to landing those strikes. And like, let's not forget, Conor is also equally good with high kicks as well, like as opposed to Dustin. Dustin picks you apart with calf kicks, but like Conor's ability to throw kicks at you out of nowhere to your head is dangerous. Like, it's a good thing Dustin blocked them. His defense was great. But there's I do feel like regardless of Conor being in the twilight zone of his career, he's still got that arsenal of weapons. He's still equipped with them, and he's still really fucking good at deploying them. Like I would argue maybe the only thing he could have done in the first fight was switch his stance, right? And even then, you saw him catch Dustin's leg kicks. I was only wondering why he didn't take him down. Like, Dustin tried taking Conor down, and like that wasn't like the most effective takedown either. He was still eating punches from Conor, like in that fight.
Yeah.
So
he was.
Like, I don't know, man. I don't think I can ever count Conor McGregor out. And like you said, it's best for business if he wins. I see the fight that needs to happen after this is, Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler to fight the winner of that fight fights the winner of Oliveira versus Poirier or McGregor. That's the most sensible thing to do. Like,
before you go ahead, there's one point I want to make about Conor McGregor that again, it's a technical point I want to make. Conor does have that knockout power. Yes, he does, but not after the third round. He doesn't knock people down after the third round. He doesn't have that spring in his step. So his style is very explode, do damage and get out. That is a very draining style of fighting, because when you explode the way you explode and you try to keep that sustainable over 5 rounds, that's virtually impossible. Okay, no fighter besides unless you're a grappler, because grapplers do have that sort of
energy.
How do I say this?
Or stamina.
No, ability to allocate oxygen in the muscles they need to.
Okay.
So wrestlers don't get very heavy legs. So wrestlers, even when they throw overhands like Khabib in the second round, he threw that overhand right and knocked McGregor down. Right, that was the first time I've ever seen McGregor get knocked down in a fight. So when McGregor loses his spring in his step, that's when it starts to become a problem for him. And that's when Dustin Poirier, I think, is going to capitalize on that and drag McGregor into the later rounds. But this is my most honest thought about what Conor is. As long as things are going his way, his performance gets better. And that's not a very good thing for a 5-round fight, because things can be very back and forth in 5-round fights. Things can be very unpredictable in 5-round fights, and you never know in a split second. It takes one overhand right, it takes one takedown, it takes one elbow to fuck you up and fuck up the entire pace of that fight. I'm not saying that it can't happen to Dustin as well, but I am saying that adversity introduces a man to himself, and Dustin has been more honest with himself in the last couple of years than Conor has. So I think that's what makes the difference in this fight, more than it being a conditioning issue. It's just the ability to deal with adversity in a good way.
I think the most psychological aspect of this is also the fact that Conor showed how much of a nice guy he was earlier, and now he's trying to bring that trash talk persona again. But I'm sorry, that's not how it works.
You can see it's a little fake. You can see it's a little fake.
You know that you're doing it to fuck with the guy. And the problem is, the moment I know you're doing it to fuck with me, I'm not even going to be phased. I'm just going to let you have your thing. Dustin isn't even going to be irritated. He's just going to be like, I want to fuck you up even more now. He's going to go into the smile on his face. He's not even going to be angry or any of that. And I feel like that's where McGregor fucked up, right? Like, he shouldn't have, you either continue playing nice guy or you just play positive or optimistic.
You be who you are, man. You be who you are. You be who you are. You don't change yourself for anybody.
So yeah, man, I think just to say that I would probably give this to Dustin in the third round. I think they drag it out one more round, because I think Conor would work on his, but I think Dustin's got a few tricks up his sleeve that he's kind of letting Conor have his moment and talk trash. And then, Dustin, he's not the kind of guy to talk trash. He goes in there and walks the walk. He doesn't talk the talk. Fucking love the guy for that. Yeah. So, yeah, man, third round KO, Dustin Poirier. What do you got?
Yeah, I have Dustin Poirier by TKO or by, or by KO in the third or the fourth round.
Look at us. We finally agree on one decision. Let's go.
Exactly.
About fucking time. And, now you've got some really good engagement with your followers and whatnot on social media. I love the game that you play there. You're always
here we go. Okay.
And and the cool thing is, now somebody had asked you who you think the GOAT of the sport is. So if you have to give Mr. Anonymous a little sum over there, you go first.
So my take on this is given that the sport, I want to address two very important aspects of why I think that this person is the GOAT. Okay. First of all, the sport is the best it's ever been. People are not, the MMA fighters are not just the 40-year-old truck drivers that, fight on the weekends. They're not just cops who train at the end of the day. These are professional athletes who train 4 to 5 times a day. These are professional athletes who think more than they can do. Sorry, who think before they do.
Right.
So for that very reason, I feel like I give the GOAT status to Kamaru Usman. And a very close second to him is Khabib Nurmagomedov. For no other reason except the fact that the sport is the best it's ever been. They adapted to the sport, have showed up every single time, outperformed every single fighter that they've fought since Khabib's never lost, but since Kamaru Usman's only one and only loss in his career, he has showed up every single time and dominated all of his opponents. And what makes him very different from everybody in the sport, I'm not talking about in his weight division, I'm talking about in the sport of MMA, which is why I consider him to be the GOAT, is because his mind is stronger than everybody's, the way he says so. He is a fucking problem, like he says. And that's not true. And he really, truly believes what he says. And he's not a dick about it. He's not an asshole about it. He just knows. Even against Gilbert Burns, as emotionally hurt as he might have been, he kept that under wraps. And he was so fucking composed in that fight. Mm-hmm. When Gilbert knocked him down, you didn't see his face change, which was a little scary to see, because normally people, when they get knocked down, they go, oh, they do all of that shit. Kamaru Usman just kept a fucking poker face throughout that knockdown, throughout him having to deal with that. So he reset and, he changed his stance. And then he just started landing that jab with that poker face. Jab, again, poker face. He didn't get overexcited when he hurt Gilbert Burns. And then after that, his fight against Masvidal, all the shit talking, all of the, I love Masvidal. I love Masvidal for what he did in their first meeting when he took that fight on 6 days' notice, got 20 pounds, did what he had to do. But don't forget that Kamaru had to make adjustments in that sense as well.
Oh, for sure. Without a doubt.
Yeah, because he was preparing, mentally, he was preparing for somebody that he loved very dearly at one time in his life. And that takes a shitload of mental fortitude to have to overcome. And then when Gilbert Burns fell out 9 days before the fight, on 6 days' notice, he knows that he's fighting Jorge Masvidal, who is definitely a more deadly striker than Gilbert Burns is, just because he's got that boxing pedigree, just because he's got that knockout power, because and he's proved that to everybody time and time again. So more than Khabib, and I'm talking about actively right now, because Khabib's last win was against Justin Gaethje and then he retired, right?
Yeah, so, fair. And that 29-0 record is it's almost daunting, man. It's not something that you can just ignore.
It is.
But I mean, that's also to see that like a majority of that was done domestically in Russia, like, which is why, like, I don't disagree with the fact that Usman belongs in there. But for me, somehow I keep coming back to Bones purely because of the leg, like with the fact that he's had close to 10 title defenses. Like, Usman's great. Ever since he's become champ, he's had 5 title defenses already. I would just say that, like, I think it's going to take like 2 more years, because I think Usman and Jones are like almost the same age, right? So when you look at
Usman's a little younger,
and I think Jones is still 33, and for the way he's been, the amount of time he spent in the sport, you'd think that John Jones is like a 38-year-old guy who's like a veteran thing. No, he's still in his fucking prime, like after 10 title defenses. And you're probably the best judge over here, right? But if you look at, would you say that his victories over Vitor Belfort and Rashad Evans and Lyoto Machida, Mauricio Rua, even these guys back then, weren't they in their prime, or would you say that they were kind of in a twilight zone when John Jones beat them?
I'd say Mauricio Shogun Rua was not in his prime when John Jones beat him, because Shogun was a fucking nightmare on the ground. Okay, back in the day, which is why I'm talking about the evolution of the sport the way I'm talking about it. If Jones was to face Jan Blachowicz now, I think that Jones would get absolutely fucked and get knocked out.
And I think like the same reason why you described for GSP, right? The fact that even his last fight with Michael, immense respect for the fact that he did that after a 4-year gap, right?
Exactly.
And considering that his win against Johnny Hendricks was extremely controversial. See, don't get me wrong, amazing run for the guy, right? He also had a crazy run with title defenses and whatnot. But again, fighting people from 2 generations, because Anderson Silva tried that and failed terribly at it, right?
Exactly.
Like, he tarnished his entire legacy, went to shit. props to him for trying. I have a lot of respect for the fact
seriously,
that,
honestly,
he said that, what, just because I went in on this run, I don't call it quits after like 2 losses. He went on to try and prove himself. But, that's the whole thing, right? Like, where do you see Kamaru Usman in 3 to 4 years? Because he's also in his 30s. Like, he's probably got like, I would say 5 years of his prime left before, he enters that twilight zone. But I don't know. I think we need to give him at least a year or two. And I swear to God, at the pace that this man's going, he's probably going to have another 4 title defenses by then. And, I want to wrap this up with a quick, with the last thing that one of your followers
I'm not looking forward to this. I'm not looking forward to this.
Sex before a fight, is it good? I mean, I don't know, man. I have sex all the time. I'm just, this face is constantly swimming in that pussy pool. So, it's just...
Okay. No comment. But, no comment. But, okay, so this is a question I get quite often, but I always avoid answering it because I don't know how to put it into words, man. So again, my body's going cold when I say this. Okay, now I know that my mother watches all of my podcast episodes. So if my mom's watching right now, Mama, please, if you're watching this, just turn it off now because you don't want to hear what's
Auntie, he doesn't have sex now. He doesn't know what sex means, Auntie.
Yeah, he does. I don't know what sex means. Okay, so coming back to this point, the old school mentality that that talks about you not having sex before a fight. There's a difference. Not having sex is subjective. So it's the orgasm part that makes you lose your edge when you're fighting because you feel relaxed. Fighters think that they need to stay on edge and think that they need to stay, think that they need to stay celibate before a fight because it'll create that extra aggression or that extra that little extra something during the fight.
When that testosterone doesn't leave your body as much, right?
The testosterone doesn't leave your body even. Yeah, the testosterone doesn't leave your body even when you come. When you come after you have sex, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's just that people feel relaxed after they have sex, which is what old school fighters don't want to do. But in the last couple of years, I have to credit Conor McGregor to this because I started having sex around the time that I started watching MMA and started doing all of that because that's when I turned 17 and that's when all of that shit happened. But I've often found in my own personal experience, now this is not the same for everybody. I'm not telling fighters to take my advice and do what I'm doing. Okay. You have to, this is always, I don't know how to say this. This has always been very trial and error with me. A lot of aspects in fighting for me have been through trial and error. Right. So what
do you tell a girl when you're banging up before a fight? Yeah, you're just an experiment over here. I want to see if I bust a nut, if I'm going to win or lose. What do you mean? What does this mean? It's an experiment. Fucking doing Dexter's lab over here.
No. So it's always so sex has always helped me stay very, very focused. And just it's made me want to show up to training every day and do better. So it makes you feel like more of a man when you have sex, and then you go train or you go do whatever. Your day is just better, your mood is just better, and when you're fighting, your mood has to be good. You can't be mind fucked.
But
and when is a man most? Yeah, sorry.
You brought up that point, right? So what do you just have sex and not come so that you don't get into that state of relaxation?
I was just going to say that. Yes. So when I do have sex, I don't. I'm not gonna have sex and come 2 days before the fight or 3 days before the fight. Right.
Okay.
I stop having sex and coming maybe 2 weeks out. Two weeks out from the fight, just because I want to. But when I do get closer to a fight, I don't stop having sex. It's just that I'm cutting weight at that point. So, the girl that I'm with at that point, I just, yes. Actually, I mean, sex does help with that as well. It's just, I'm not kidding, depending on, what sort of sex you're into. But, so my advice to people, so to answer this question in short, try and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Okay. Because again, this is a very subjective answer. I can give you this answer, but somebody else will give you a very, very different answer. If you speak to an old school coach, they'll say, don't have sex 6 months before a fight. You speak to a guy like Conor McGregor, a guy like Muhammad Ali said that he wouldn't make love for 6 months before a fight, right? Which is fucking insane. And he was, he has that GOAT status. But you talk about Conor McGregor. I'm talking about 2016 Conor McGregor when he was in his fucking prime. He says that he would have sex right before the fight. I mean, who's to argue with him at that point? So different things work for different people. Okay. So try out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and shoot me a DM and let me know how it went, man. That's all.
And if you catch Karan the time that he's unavailable to fuck you, my Instagram is @Turkey. I live in Dubai.
I have a girl now, man. I don't really care. I have a girl now, man. I don't really
if
care.
the DMs are going there, like, because he has a girl, just, forward that exact same DM to me, See, I don't fight, so I get fuck all the time, so I don't really have, I just put you down in the schedule,
Cool.
Put it down in the calendar with a reminder that, hey, there's a dick appointment at like 8 o'clock. So, name's not Turkey for no reason.
Man.
I'm just, it's the, ask your question to my PSA. Let's go.
It's such a, cool.
Like, this is just me pimping myself out at this point. So it's what a man's got to do. So yeah, man, this is awesome. I'm glad this is a wrap for Chronic Nirvana Combat, officially the first episode in chronological order, number 4. We're going to keep coming back for more once we streamline a little more shit. But yeah, man, really glad to have had this done. And we're going to catch you soon. Thank you so much for this, bro.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I'll talk to you soon.
For sure, man. Fight night it is. Catch you on Sunday.
You. Yes, you. Thank you for watching the Chronic Nirvana podcast. And if you aren't following us on Instagram yet, what are you waiting for?
What are they waiting for?
Make sure you do right now. Like, before you stop everything you're doing and follow us on Instagram right now @Chronic Nirvana.
100%. And if you have any friends that would like to be a part of the podcast, has an interesting story to say, please let us know in the comment section below or on Instagram.
And if you feel like you yourself have an interesting story to share and want to be a part of the podcast, make sure you DM us on Instagram or just leave your suggestions down in the comment section below on YouTube or on Instagram or wherever we put out the podcast, honestly.
100%. And if you don't have the time to watch a Chronic Nirvana episode, please do check out the Chronic Nirvana clips on YouTube and get yourself a new job.
So this is Nikhil.
And I'm Dakshay.
And this is Chronic Nirvana.